Today, a tense exchange on Capitol Hill is raising fresh questions about constitutional authority, federal power, and the role of the executive branch. If you want to stay informed with clear, human explanations of what's happening in Washington, don't forget to subscribe.
I'm going to hold off on my questions until the members have got done to see if some of them are duplicative. And so, Ms. Underwood, the floor is yours for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This weekend, the president made the remarkable statement that he, quote, doesn't know whether he has to uphold the Constitution. You, however, have taken a different position, both in your confirmation hearing and when you took the oath of office. You said that you were committed to complying with the Constitution. Do you still stand by that statement?
Absolutely. I believe President Trump
Excellent.
as well.
Let's start with Article 1, which gives Congress and only Congress the power of the purse. No money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law. But this administration is freezing, terminating, and even clawing back federal grants and awards that were already signed into law. These are taxpayer dollars that were appropriated by Congress for the specific purposes that we laid out. So, Secretary, let me ask you, do you believe the administration has the authority to subvert appropriations law to freeze and terminate congressional funding?
The administration and the Department of Homeland Security used our authorities that we have to evaluate every grant that was in front of us and meet statutory requirements, but also to make sure that they were being spent appropriate.
So, of course, the president is within his authorities.
Make sure that
ma'am, this is my time. Thank you so much. Of course, the president's within his authorities to drive policy decisions within the bounds of federal law and the Constitution, but that's not what you've been doing. What I'm asking is whether you believe you have the authority to ignore appropriations law. Do you believe that the Constitution gives the executive branch unilateral authority to withhold funds appropriated by the legislative branch?
We have evaluated grants to make sure if they're being spent appropriately, and work that is underway and was authorized has continued. Other grants that have not been started and have not been authorized or obligated, we have reevaluated. And I think you're talking specifically about grants potentially within FEMA that were non-disaster related grants.
I'm talking broadly, ma'am, and Article 2 does not give the executive the authority to withhold funds, period. And multiple courts have weighed in to agree. Multiple courts have ruled in agreement. Congress controls the power of the purse. That is a fact. That's not a question. That is a fact. And so if the president disagrees with certain spending, Congress passed the Impoundment Act to create a legal process to seek rescissions, and we expect him to follow the law. This administration is not just ignoring the constitutional power of the people's elected representatives. It is also violating the fundamental right of individuals. Do you believe that the Constitution grants everyone in our country the right to due process, including non-citizens?
The administration has the authority to.
Ma'am, I'm looking for a yes or no question. Yes or no. Do you believe the Constitution? Yes, ma'am. Do you,
we have not conducted
claiming my time, Mr. Chairman? Time is yours. Okay. Secretary Noem, I'm just looking for a yes or no here. Do you believe the Constitution guarantees due process to everyone in America?
Due process is exactly what this Congress lays out.
Yes or no? Okay, ma'am, I'll take that as a no. Excuse me, I'm trying to ascertain your understanding of the law as it applies to your department, and you as its leader should be able to give us a yes or no answer, because judge after judge has ruled that the law is not being followed. Do you believe that the U.S. government has the authority to deport American citizens?
No, and we are not deporting U.S. citizens.
I'm so happy to hear that you do not believe that the law gives you that authority, because the federal government has no authority under U.S. laws to deport any American citizen. And as I know, everyone viewing this hearing today knows that several American citizens have been deported to date. Secretary Noem, that was not a question. Secretary Noem, that oath that we both swore before taking office was to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States, not the president, not a political party, the Constitution. And that's what we're going to keep doing here at the Appropriations Committee. Thank you. I yield back.
During a high-stakes hearing, Representative Lauren Underwood challenged Secretary Kristin Noem over the administration's handling of congressionally approved federal funds. The flashpoint came after recent comments from the president in which he suggested he doesn't know whether he is required to uphold the Constitution, remarks that immediately rippled through political and legal circles. Underwood seized on that moment, contrasting it with Noem's own sworn commitment to comply with the Constitution. If you want deeper breakdowns like this as they unfold, make sure you're subscribed. What followed was a pointed back and forth centering on Article 1 of the Constitution, the section that gives Congress, and only Congress, the power of the purse. Underwood pressed Noem on whether the administration had the legal authority to freeze, terminate, or claw back federal grants that were already appropriated by law. These are not theoretical dollars. They're taxpayer funds explicitly directed by Congress for specific uses. Underwood argued that the executive branch has no authority to ignore those appropriations, and she's not alone. Multiple federal courts have ruled that a president cannot unilaterally withhold funds in defiance of Congress. Most viewers have heard about the power of the purse, but many don't realize that this principle is foundational to preventing presidential overreach. Congress decides how money is spent, and the executive carries out those decisions. If this kind of constitutional context helps clarify the news for you, consider subscribing so you don't miss future breakdowns. Noem responded by saying the administration was simply evaluating grants to ensure they were being used appropriately, suggesting the issue was about oversight, not defiance of Congress. Underwood, however, emphasized that appropriations law leaves no room for executive reinterpretation after funds have been passed and signed into law. Her point was that if a president disagrees with congressional spending, he must follow the legal process known as rescission, which requires congressional approval. This procedural detail matters because it shows how the balance of power is maintained in practice. If you appreciate analysis that connects moments like this to how government actually works, subscribe to stay in the loop. The hearing grew even more intense when the discussion turned to due process rights. Underwood asked Noem a direct question: whether everyone in America, including non-citizens, is guaranteed due process under the Constitution. The Supreme Court has long held that due process protections apply to all persons on U.S. soil, not just citizens. Underwood pushed for a clear yes or no answer, citing rulings that the administration's actions are violating these protections. These exchanges can feel technical, but they touch on core constitutional principles that shape how millions of people are treated by their government. If you want these principles explained in plain language, don't forget to subscribe. Finally, Underwood posed a question with enormous legal implications: whether the U.S. government has the authority to deport American citizens. Noem answered no, a rare moment of unambiguous agreement. This is an important reminder of the limits of federal power. Citizenship comes with constitutional protections that cannot be brushed aside even in the heated debates over immigration enforcement. If in-depth context like this helps you understand the stakes behind these hearings, make sure you're subscribed for more. Today's exchange wasn't just political theater. It revealed the ongoing clash over separation of powers, the boundaries of executive authority, and the rights the Constitution guarantees to everyone under U.S. jurisdiction. As these debates continue, staying informed is essential. Subscribe so you never miss a breakdown that cuts through the noise and brings clarity to the stories shaping our democracy.